Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to talk about Freud's hidden map to the female mind. 97% of men ignore this. This is part 2 of a series that I'm doing on Freudian psychology. In part 1, we talked about how he conceptualized the Oedipus complex and how it related to same-sex and exclusive attraction. Today, we're going to talk about his thoughts on female sexuality. Now, before we begin, I just want to say that this topic is quite controversial, because many people disagree with Freud's ideas on female sexuality. However, it's important to remember that Freud was a pioneer in the field of psychoanalysis, and his ideas, whether we agree with them or not, have had a profound impact on our understanding of the human mind. So with that said, let's dive into Freud's hidden map to the female mind. In order to understand Freud's theories on female sexuality, we first have to understand his theory on female development. Just like male development, Freud believed that a girl goes through a psychosexual stage called the phallic stage, where she develops sexual desires for her father. However, unlike the boy who experiences castration anxiety, the girl experiences something called penis envy. According to Freud, penis envy is a girl's natural desire to have a penis and the envy she feels towards her father for possessing one. He believed that this envy was so intense that it could significantly shape a girl's personality and relationships throughout her life. To cope with this envy, Freud proposed that girls go through a process called the resolution of penis envy. During this process, the girl realizes that she cannot have her father's penis and redirects her sexual desires towards her mother. She then identifies with her mother and adopts her role in the family, which leads to the development of a feminine gender identity. Once this resolution is complete, the girl is no longer fixated on her penis envy and can move on to other stages of development. Now, according to Freud, if a girl does not successfully resolve her penis envy, she may develop what he called an under-masculine character. This means that she will always feel inadequate because she doesn't have a penis, and she might act out or be overly competitive in order to compensate for this perceived lack. On the other hand, if a girl is overcompensating for her penis envy, she will develop what Freud called an over-masculine character. These women are often flirtatious and promiscuous because they are trying to make up for their lack of a penis by seeking out male attention. It's important to note that Freud did not believe that all girls experience penis envy, or that all girls will go through these character types. He saw these concepts as extreme examples of how unresolved sexuality can affect a person's development. However, his critics argue that these ideas are based on nothing more than speculation, and are not supported by empirical evidence. They also argue that these ideas are rooted in sexism and reinforce harmful stereotypes about women. So now that we've covered the basics of female development according to Freud, let's talk about his ideas on female sexuality. One of the most controversial aspects of Freud's work is his theory on female orgasms. According to Freud, there are two types of female orgasms, the direct and the indirect. The direct orgasm is the one that most people are familiar with, and it occurs when the clitoris is stimulated directly. The indirect orgasm, however, is a bit more complicated, and it occurs when there is a buildup of sexual tension in the vagina that is released through the G-spot. The reason why this is controversial is because Freud's ideas on female orgasm were very different from the prevailing beliefs of his time. At the time, it was widely believed that women could not orgasm, and if they did, it was only through autoeroticism or masturbation. Freud's ideas were groundbreaking and they challenged the status quo. However, they also made him a target of a lot of criticism and ridicule. Now, despite the controversy surrounding his ideas, Freud's theories on female orgasm paved the way for future research and exploration of female sexuality. It also helped to break down some of the taboos surrounding women's sexuality, and it allowed for a more open and honest conversation about female pleasure. Now moving on to another controversial topic, let's talk about Freud's ideas on female hysteria. Hysteria was a very common diagnosis in the late 19th century, and it was used to describe a variety of symptoms that were thought to be caused by a woman's sexuality. These symptoms could include anything from anxiety and depression to paralysis and even seizures. Freud believed that these symptoms were actually a form of repressed sexuality manifesting itself in physical symptoms. He argued that these symptoms were not caused by a woman's anatomy, but by her unconscious mind. According to Freud, the symptoms of hysteria were a result of a psychological conflict between the ID ego and superego. The ID, as we've discussed before, is the part of the mind that contains all of our primitive desires, including sexual desires. The superego is the part of the mind that acts as our conscience, and the ego is the part of the mind that mediates between the other two. Freud believed that when the id's sexual desires were repressed by the superego, it manifested itself in physical symptoms. Now, the treatment for hysteria, according to Freud, was psychoanalysis. Through psychoanalysis, the woman would be able to bring her repressed sexual desires to consciousness and then work through them with the help of her analyst. This process often involved a lot of free association and dream interpretation. Now, it's important to note that this idea of female hysteria is no longer considered to be a valid diagnosis. It was eventually dropped from the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. However, it's still important to understand it, because it was a common way of thinking about women's mental health for a large part of history. It also shows how Freud's theories were not only groundbreaking but also controversial and often misunderstood. Finally, let's talk about the last point on Freud's hidden map to the female mind, which is his concept of female masochism. Now, masochism is a form of sexual pleasure that involves pain or humiliation, and Freud believed that female masochism was a result of penis envy. According to him, the female masochist is a woman who has an intense longing for a penis and she finds pleasure in being dominated by a man. He believed that this is because the female masochist sees the male as having the power and the strength that she envies. By submitting to the male and allowing him to dominate her, she is able to live vicariously through him and experience the power that she feels she lacks. However, this idea has been heavily criticized by feminist scholars who argue that it reinforces negative stereotypes about women and ignores the agency of women who seek out pain in sexual contexts. Despite the criticism, this idea is still an important part of understanding the complexity of female sexuality and the different ways in which women experience pleasure. And that brings us to the end of Freud's hidden map to the female mind. As you can see, his ideas were groundbreaking but also highly controversial. It's important to remember that he was writing at a time when there was very little known about female sexuality, and he was trying to explore a topic that was largely taboo. His ideas may not be accepted by everyone, but they certainly were a step in the right direction towards a better understanding of female sexuality. So I hope you found this video interesting and informative. If you did, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.